Hi, everybody. My name is Kevin Kukan. I'm Vice President of Customer Success at Deladeo. We will be talking to you today during our 20-minute presentation about our revolutionary real-time AI filtering technology. Before we get into this, however, I would like to encourage you to stop by the booth to talk to your account executive, Theo Bryant. Theo can be found at booth number 506. He'd be happy to answer any questions for you, give you a live demo or what have you. We're going to be talking about our product, but we're also going to be talking about the majority of this. We'll be talking about some of the research and some of the data that's out here that's impacting and that has having an impact rather on what's going on in schools from the standpoint of digital learning environments. But first and foremost, we are unique. We are the only real-time artificial intelligence content filter that is out on the market. So we'll be talking a little bit about that. We do some things that are extremely unique in this space. We also have classroom management components. We have wellness, monitoring, and detection. So we have a lot of really nice features that I'm sure Theo would be happy to share with you. The majority of this content that we're going to be talking about, however, is research that we've done. We've established a body of research that we've published recently in a report. You can access the report behind our resources tab at deladeo.com. But it's some pretty compelling information that we've assembled. We'd strongly encourage you to head out there and take a look at the report to read it in its definitive form. Um, and essentially, what we're looking at are some of the things that have emerged here. Things by things, I mean trends, patterns, what the research has found as it relates to digital learning and digital immersion and things like media multitasking. But first and foremost, we have to start and kind of address the elephant in the room here and the fact that schools have really gone through a remarkable transformation. When you look at this, and we've talked about this ad nauseum, frankly, since COVID, but it's pretty significant, and it's a very abrupt change that occurred. And we're 4 to 5 years out from that. However, we're still trying to navigate this. We as an institution, as an entity, K-12 education, we're still trying to navigate the way to really truly maximize educational technology. But it's important to note that we haven't been here before as a country, and we're still kind of learning this. So this whole process is really evolving. Can we say educational technology has been a success? No, in some instances, yes. In some instances, there are certainly challenges. But one of the things that we need to address directly is how the internet is impacting our lives and how the internet has really developed and emerged and how this is impacting what's going on in your schools. Back in 95, there were only a little over 23,000 websites. And by the way, in 95 and 96, this is when URL, domain based and keyword based filtering technology was developed. And frankly, it hasn't changed a whole lot since then. We aren't reliant upon keyword lists or block lists, but that goes without saying. But right now, we've got 252,000 new websites that are going live every day. Frankly, your IT department is more than likely managing that flood, that tidal wave of content with a list, trying to manage URL or keyword list, keyword block list types of things. Deladeo's AI isn't dependent upon that. Okay, so our AI is actually able to recognize the content and see the content and understand. We're more than aware. We actually know. We can recognize student intent. So we're doing some things that are very unique in this space. We can't put all of this that's gone on the backs of schools. Okay, some of the things that schools are experiencing, that schools are being forced to deal with right now, have had nothing to do with them whatsoever. And this book in particular was interesting by Dr. Gloria Mark from UC Irvine. And in it, she was looking at attention spans, digital attention spans, and our ability to pay attention online has dropped pretty significantly from 2004 to 2021 at the time that this book was published. But she also made note of screen time and how the average hours of screen time is now trickling down to very young students, preschool students, and how that could potentially be impacting what is going on in schools as these students grow up and enter schools, enter first grade, move on to middle school and high school, etc. Another book that's fairly noted in this regard was by Jonathan Haidt, and this came out last year, The Anxious Generation. And in it, Haidt basically talks about the differences and the changes that have occurred in children's play. And he talks about a play-based childhood where students are active, they're outside or they're inside, they're engaging, there's eye contact, there's socialization, there's direct interaction with other human beings, to what is kind of emerging now is a device-based childhood, where students aren't engaging with other individuals to the degree that they were previously. And what happens when that occurs, when that face-to-face communication is kind of squelched, if you will, is that there's some interesting and somewhat alarming trends that are emerging with students who are immersed in digital content at a fairly young age. So there's some pretty significant impacts on management of real world social situations, the ability to express empathy, the ability to interpret nonverbal cues, etc. And coincidentally, what has also occurred during a similar timeline, and I don't mean to draw a connection to this or to say that it's digital media's fault, but we've seen some interesting trends as well as it relates to student wellness. Between 2000 rather and 2010, we saw a 6.7% increase. From 2010 to 2020. That jumped up to 82% increase in the suicide rate among adolescents. So that is certainly significant. It's a correlation. Can we certainly say that it's the reason? Obviously not. But it is a rather compelling statistic nonetheless, given the changes that have occurred with regard to our digital consumption. Just asking the question kind of randomly, but how many of you have checked your phone at this point? I'd be willing to bet some of you. I probably would have done so as well, and you're not unique. Okay, as adults, we do this. Okay, we're on average unlocking our phones 150 times a day. We're checking our phone every 10 minutes. 138 million of us admit to watching TV while using another device. Okay, we're basically kind of media multitasking, and the thing of it is that our students are doing that as well, except at probably a much heightened level. But we expect them to be able to walk into the classroom doors and just turn it off. And that simply isn't the case for a good share of them. That is not something that they're, in some instances, capable of doing. And many of these students, and media multitasking is a term that has emerged, but many of these students, they frankly, they begin to kind of delude themselves into thinking that they're good at multitasking. And these trends with regard to kind of immersion in media are really kind of startling when you really look at this. 31% of us as adults admit to being online almost constantly. 20% of our kids, the tweens, are waking up at night to check their social media profiles. So the importance and the emphasis that's being put on digital content certainly cannot be overlooked. So you know what, people are distracted. So what, particularly these digital natives, they're able to navigate that, aren't they? Well, yes and no. We'll learn more about that shortly. But here's the thing, is that there has been work, and there are studies out here that look at distraction and recovery time from distractions. And in a digital learning environment, this particular studies found that it can take up to 30 minutes for a student to refocus to the level they are at prior to that distraction. In the context of a 50-minute class period, that's a pretty significant amount of time. So yeah, you know what? It actually is a big deal. And this whole notion of media multitasking, during instruction or during studying, is really kind of starting to rise to the top in terms of schools paying attention to this type of thing, because students are showing, impacts on attention. They're seeing, increased fatigue, decreased reading comprehension, etc. and this whole notion that the digital natives have, that we're great digital multitaskers, and it's not impacting our performance or what have you, is really kind of a misnomer. And this particular study was done through Stanford University that indicated that these kids were less efficient. They had changes in brain function, and the whole rub of this is that they actually thought that they're being more productive when actuality they were not. So this whole notion is really an illusion. We're only able to, our brain is only able to comprehend one single thought at a time. We aren't capable of doing that. So this whole idea of kind of flooding our brains with different inputs from a variety of digital sources isn't having the impact that many of us think it is, in terms of increased production. And really, what we're talking about here is self-regulation. And the question, can't students just pay attention? And frankly, that depends upon the student. But first, we have to establish the fact that this whole idea of self-regulation is correlated to higher academic success. So students are able to self-regulate, they're able to pay attention, or what have you, in whatever environment, tend to achieve higher academic success levels. In a digital learning environment, this is where it changes. It's very difficult for students to manage and to develop self-regulation skills. And in fact, one of the key pieces that I think is important, I'm a former middle school teacher, so I could see this, but many students simply demonstrate an inability to turn it off. They cannot put it down. So effectively, we're asking some of these students to do something that they frankly aren't capable of doing. So what is the impact? Maybe you're sitting there kind of staring off into the abyss like Horton here, but what are the impacts? What does this all mean? Well, first of all, maybe some of your classes are looking something like this. This is actually a college classroom, but I found this out on Google Images. I thought it was kind of funny because it may be representative of what's happening in schools across the country with regard to students being able to kind of go almost wherever they want, in many instances, online. And the question that schools have to ask themselves, there's a couple, but what is classroom instruction looking like? What do we want to become managers? Are our teachers managing, or do we want our teachers to be engaging with students? And I think the answer to that is obvious, right? We want teachers to be engaging. And really, what you need to ask yourself is, isn't our filter supposed to do this? Why are our teachers spending time sitting in front of a screen, closing tabs and locking browsers? That's why we have a filter. So, and essentially what has happened is that the nature of the internet has surpassed the ability of the legacy technology, surpassed the ability of that technology to manage it effectively. The internet is simply too vast and too dynamic, and that technology simply was not created for things like YouTube, for example. And this was an interesting article from the Wall Street Journal. And this particular teacher from North Carolina, basically talks about her, busting kids every day, getting them off this YouTube video or that YouTube video, when she should be actually walking around and helping students, right? That's what we want our teachers to be able to do. That something is a thing when it starts appearing on Shorts or on TikTok or what have you. And I found these two videos right here that kind of lampooning teachers staring at screens, watching what students are doing on their devices. But what impact does this have, that actual act of having to do that, of like split attention, if you will? What is it doing to teachers? Well, in this particular study, it was found that the students who are digital multitasking and were constantly being kind of corrected by teachers, it was viewed, probably rightfully so, as being somewhat disrespectful. But teachers also felt that it was almost a critique on their effectiveness. That said, this divided attention that we're seeing actually has been connected to and is correlated to reduced teacher effectiveness. And frankly, the teachers you know, they need to ask themselves, and the schools do as well, you know, what are we going to do? Are we going to, you know, devote time to teaching? Or are we going to become, you know, digital hall monitors? Is that our task in the classroom? Um, our artificial intelligence is having a significant impact on classrooms and on decreasing the number of distractions that students are able to access during class. So these benign behaviors here, and this is actually a baby on a plane. A mother filmed this, and somebody opened up a device, and the baby's head just invariably turned. It's like they're drawn to that, and we've done that. If you've ever been on a plane, it's hard not to, right? Somebody opens up a laptop in front of you, and your eyes immediately go to it. Pretty benign behaviors. However, in a classroom, it's a little bit different, right? And there's data out there and there's research that indicates that these students who are distracted on their device are actually negatively impacting the students around them. So a student in second row in your third hour biology class who was watching a replay of the Golden State Warriors game from last night on his device, the other kids that are around him are distracted and their achievement is being impacted as well. And this was the first study that was done to really definitively connect digital distractions and what's going on in the classroom to reduce student achievement. This was done with 650,000 15-year-olds really across the world. And this is PISA is the Program for International Student Assessment. But it found that 2/3 of the U.S. kids admit to being distracted on their devices. 54% said that they'd get distracted by other kids using their devices. So, but the kicker here is that those digitally distracted students, and by the way, this assessment measured reading, math, and science literacy. But as it relates to mathematics, this study found that those distracted students scored 15 points lower in mathematics than the kids who weren't distracted, which is really significant. That's a significant amount, and that should be something that should be cause for concern, and really kind of raise eyebrows for schools all over the country. As I said previously, our real-time AI reduces distractions during class. There is no silver bullet, okay, including ours, including Deladeo. However, compared to what is out there right now, we are doing some things that are very, very different through the use of real-time artificial intelligence. Right now, this may be your IT department because they're trying to manage some things that frankly their technology, the filtering technology, that legacy technology isn't capable of managing. Our AI detects proxies at the code level. We see mouse and keypad movements indicative of gameplay. So things like Google Doodles we are able to see and we are able to block them. Okay, so it doesn't matter what the source is. If it's appearing in the browser pathway, our AI is seeing it. And here's the reality. Your students know how to bypass your filters. This is a video that I found online, and this is a high school kid who did it. He actually said, don't use the word unblocked when you're naming your video because your school's filter is going to pick it up. So the kids know how these work. The other reality is more academic. There was a study that was done in Australia that indicates that URL content filtering systems may not be as good as they're being purported to be. 95% of students in this particular study were able to bypass their filter more than 80% of the time. Deladeo isn't dependent upon URL. Our AI doesn't matter. You can have certainly a block list and you can add keywords, but the AI is not dependent upon that in order to function. And the bottom line is that your IT departments can make a difference. You can have an impact on student achievement, and you can improve your digital learning environments with the selection of innovative, cutting edge educational tools such as real-time artificial intelligence filtering. What this report did from the Office of Educational Technology, the recommendation for the National Education Technology Plan, was that schools really need to encourage or really need to consider products that have been research based. So what you're seeing here is the result of the COVID spending spree, where companies came out of the woodwork and sold every type of application you can imagine. A good share of it was not research based and was not proven to be effective in their claims. Deladeo is. So we achieved our level 4 ESSA certification. Less than 1% of EdTech products have received this, so we're certainly very proud of that. You can learn more about that as well on our website. So what is the product? What do we do here? What's our difference? Well, we've got a 3-product suite that's called Active Insights, and all products in the suite utilize our instant AI technology. Some of the differences here: we understand context. We're more than just aware. Okay, we know. We know keyword ambiguity. We can see that. We can recognize and discern inventive spelling. We blur images and video content in real time. And again, we're not URL or keyword block list dependent. So we've got 3 products: Active Scan, which is our real-time AI filtering; Active Instruct, which is a classroom management product; and Active Pulse, which is a wellness monitoring and alerting product. So please do stop by the booth. And by the way, if you do want additional reading, head out here to the site, or you can talk to Theo about it. He can help you out as well. But please do head over to the booth 506 to talk with Theo. I'm sure he'd be happy to help you out and give you a demo. Thanks again. Bye-bye.